Good morning and warm welcome to all the respected faculty members, participants, research scholars, students, and industry professionals. It's my privilege to welcome you all to day 4 of the online faculty development program on AI and data science in pharmacy education, teaching strategies and practical applications, organized by Department of Pharmaceutical Analysis, KVSR Siddhartha College of Pharmaceutical Sciences. We sincerely thank all the support throughout this. Today, we are privileged to have with us Dr. Harika Sabineni Garu, Business Development Leader, Scottsdale, Arizona, as a distinguished resource person. She will be delivering an expert session on AI in pharmaceutical analysis, clinical pharmacy, and pharmacovigilance. We are delighted to welcome Dr. Harika Sabineni to our FDP and look forward to an enriching and insightful session. Before we proceed further, I now invite Ms. K. Jyoti, Assistant Professor, Department of Pharmaceutical Analysis, to introduce our esteemed resource person and read out the biodata of Dr. Harika Sapineni Garu. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the organizing team, I extend a warm welcome to all participants and our esteemed resource person for today's FTP session. It is great pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker and proud alumni of our college. Before inviting them to deliver this session, I would like to present their biodata and highlight their academic and professional achievements. Now, with your kind attention, I shall read the biodata of our respected speaker. Dr. Harika Sabineni is a research pharmacist turned business development leader whose career bridges drug discovery and commercial strategy. She earned her Bachelor of Pharmacy from Vignan Pharmacy College in India, her master's degree from Eastern Michigan University, and her PhD in clinical and experimental therapeutics from the University of Georgia, where her research in oncology and vascular biology contributed to 14 peer-reviewed publications and 2 book chapters. Over the past decade, she has built a career in oncology business development, leading strategic accounts at Dava Oncology, advancing clinical trial and real-world data solutions at Concept AI, and serving as Senior Director, Business Development at SAPSE, and where she expanded multi-year strategic partnerships with the global pharmaceutical leaders. Today, she serves as Senior Director, Business Development, Precision Medicine at Elsevier Clinical Solutions, advancing AI-driven clinical solutions and the real-world evidence at one of the most world's trusted scientific information companies. Thank you. We are indeed honored to have such an accomplished expert with us today. Now I request our esteemed resource person, Dr. Harika Sabineni Garu, to kindly take over the session and share their valuable insights. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much for having me. Can everybody hear and see me okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Excellent. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join me today. I am by no means an expert in AI, but just like you all, I've been very curious in the past 2 years, and I think I consider myself one of the early adapters of AI. And fortunately, my work also spans across AI models and real-world data to support oncology research within pharma and biotech companies. While I don't necessarily write the models or code the models, I'm heavily involved in keeping an eye on where the landscape is, how the regulatory bodies like FDA and EMA are thinking about incorporating AI into pharmaceutical drug development and oncology research and development in general. So I've been fortunate enough to be a part of that evolving landscape for the past 2 to 3 years. So I'm happy to share anything and everything I've learned along the way. And if there's anything I can give personal experience examples, I will do so along the way. Feel free to stop me anytime, ask any questions, but I'll also save some time later on to have an interactive discussion. So don't be shy, okay? Let me share my screen. Can you all see my Claude? Can someone give me a thumbs up if you're seeing my Anthropic Claude?
Yes.
Okay, great. So before we jump into the didactics, I thought maybe we'd just demonstrate really quickly what it is that we're about to talk about today. So for something as simple as a one-line statement, and I say, write a multiple choice question for a second-year pharmacy student on beta blocker contraindications with 4 options and an explanation for the correct answer. Let's see what the GPT comes up with. So it beautifully wrote out with just one line of prompt. It beautifully wrote out a question and multiple choice options and the correct answer and the explanation. Now, you all are the experts and educators, so if this is wrong, please correct me. But I have verified it and vetted it, and as you can tell, within 10 seconds, I have this elaborate answer. And it also highlights for educators like yourself, what is the key teaching moment here? So it talks about the complications. It talks about things that you need to take into account when you're teaching your students about these drugs and this class of drugs. So this is a simple demonstration of with one line of prompt, with one simple written text, you got such a scientific, such a validated output. Now, can you imagine what else we can do with these capabilities? And that's exactly what we're about to uncover today. I prepared a very light presentation for you guys because I don't want this to be super didactic. I want it to be more interactive. So please jump in at any time, ask me questions, and make it a live discussion. Can you see my screen with the green slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Awesome. So again, my name is Harika Sabineni. I have been dabbling in AI for the past couple of years. For today's discussion, I wanted to make it very educating the educators is a privilege and an honor. So I want to make sure that you get the most out of this as someone that has been genuinely curious about AI and keeps an eye on how it's being used in the evolving landscape of drug development. For today, like I said, I'll keep it very light and interactive. We'll talk about what generative AI is, what it's capable of doing, and particularly for educators like yourselves, what are the tools that you can use for research purposes, for education purposes, how to prompt, ethics and regulatory considerations of using AI safely, teaching strategies, and further, how do you empower your students through mini projects, and how can you assign AI to design these assignments for you and your students. And obviously, I would love to save some time at the end for discussion, so please ask me any questions, and if we have time, we can actually build out a use case live. So, what is generative AI and how is that different from, say, Google? Actually, there's a lot of research that shows that today, most people, especially on the Western world, are turning to their ChatGPTs and generative AI tools to ask a question. Back in the day, if you were to go to Google and say, where are the restaurants near me? What's the best coffee shop near me? People are actually going straight to their ChatGPT and Claude and asking this question because why? Google might give you the top answer, but a generative AI will actually synthesize an answer based on all of the information that it has in front of it. So not only does it look at all the coffee shops around us, but it will also take into consideration what are people saying about these coffee shops? What are the reviews like? Is it open or not? And then gives you a very synthesized answer. So think of your search engine as it finds the answer that already exists, versus generative AI is a tool or software that creates answers. As the name indicates, it generates context, it generates text, it generates images, code, audio from pre-existing knowledge. So it not only spits out what it finds on the internet, but it also actually has kind of a mind on its own, which is both good but also scary because it acts so confident. Generative AI, when it gives you an answer, it is so confident, it'll make you feel like it knows exactly what it's talking about. And that's exactly where we need to be very, very careful in pushing back on generative AI, verifying where generative AI is actually making up all of this content from, and the ethical considerations on whether or not we can trust it, and at what point can we trust the solutions that is presented by generative AI. So I wanted to give you a representation of how the same tool, the same exact ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or a Copilot can do some trivial tasks like, oh, you give an email and ask it to proofread and say, fix the grammar, fix the punctuation, or make it sound a little bit more professional or better, to then maybe making it into a slightly small, bigger task like, oh, here's a research paper, there's a journal club that I want to present at, or I want to help my students understand this research paper, summarize it for me. Or you can take it one step further and, hey, here's a paper, summarize it, but also create a quiz or a test based on this paper. Or you can actually ask the ChatGPT or your favorite generative AI tool to build a case study, which actually involves the story, the problem, the story, and the solution, and everything in between. Or you can just ask your generative AI to design an entire project, start to finish. What is the research question? What are the methodologies? What are the materials and methods that we're going to use? What should the results look like? What are the analyses looking like? What to expect for results? What does a summary look like? And if executed successfully, what does this project mean? And what would that actually present to the world? So something as simple as proofreading an email to creating something from thin air, you can do it all with generative AI. The key is how you assign these tasks. It's the same tool. It's what you're asking of it and how you're asking it to do it is what makes the difference in the output that you get. So some of the tools for teaching and research in terms of generative AI that are available for public today, most of you know ChatGPT. A lot of you probably have heard of Claude by Anthropic. Some of you are probably familiar with Gemini by Google, and also a Copilot model from Microsoft. Can you show me through virtual show of hands how many people in the audience actually use Gen AI? If you do, please raise your virtual hand or give me an indication so I understand like what percentage of people are actually comfortable using Gen AI, and so I can tailor the rest of my presentation accordingly. I see one hand up. Okay, so not a whole lot of heavy users of AI, and that's fine. That's what we're going to do today. Okay, it's going up. Maybe I'll give everybody another 30 seconds to find the thumbs up button. I know it's hidden, so if you can find it on your Zoom, please let me know how many of you are actually using Gen AI, any of the Gen AI tools. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Okay, great. I will assume that not a whole lot of power users at this point, and this is a great time to explore that. So most popular generative AI tool that a lot of people are familiar with is ChatGPT. and it is free to use. You do not have to have a subscription. You do not have to pay a lot of money to use ChatGPT. I used ChatGPT free version for a year before I actually paid and upgraded for a more powerful model. Similarly to Claude, now I have actually become such a super user. I spend about $150 a month on Claude because I'm kind of an AI nerd and I like to code and kind of experiment with it a lot. So in the chat, I'm seeing ChatGPT. Okay, that's great. So maybe I will kind of cater the presentation to ChatGPT so that's more relatable. Thank you for inputting that. That really helps me understand where the audience are. Again, all of these models fundamentally do the same thing. They absorb information. All of the companies that built these models have fed the software all the possible information, whether it is from the weather, from history, from geography, from climate to food, to fashion, to art, to history, anything and everything that is publicly available on the interwebs has been fed to these models. So imagine if someone digitized and codified the entirety of Times of India newspaper from the day it was published, say 70, 100 years ago. And if someone can remember every single article that was published in Times of India, they publish recipes, they publish politics, they publish history, they publish current affairs, they publish about technology, they publish about cinema, they publish gossip, they publish markets and finances. So if someone can actually possibly remember everything that has been published every single day in Times of India for the past 75 years, how powerful that brain must be. Now imagine if the same person also remembers everything that was published in Hollywood Reporter and New York Times and Times of India and Wall Street Journal and Washington Post and every possible outlet in the world. We can't even comprehend the brain computing power this person must retain to have the knowledge that hosts all of that information in their brain, right? And that's just from newspaper. What if this person also watched every single movie that was ever made? What if this person has context on every world war and every conflict in the world? What if this person has also been fed all of the medical literature from the time the first Galileo report was published in the late 1700s? What if this person also understands entirety of cricket, soccer, football, badminton, Wimbledon, and anything and everything? We can't even imagine one brain storing all of this information and reciting that information and using it when asked, right? But that's exactly what these models do. They have been fed any and all information that has possibly been published since the time of literature, since the dawn of technology, since the dawn of newspapers, anything and everything they can get their hands on. They've fed these supercomputers, these software programs as learning material. Now, all of that information lives within these models. And based on the question you ask, based on the context you give, based on the problem you pose to this model, the output varies because it is looking within its brain and like, oh, it's a history related question. Let me look back in my memory on what I know about World War II and answer this question. Oh, this question has something to do with drug development. Let me think back and see what I have been fed in the past, since I was built about drug discovery and development and think about what this person needs from me. So that's how powerful these generative AI models are. And we will be doing ourselves a disservice if we actually don't use them. A lot of research and innovation and technology development has gone into building these models. And I think it's absolutely important and necessary for us all to tap into this wisdom and be a part of this movement. Oh, sorry, I skipped ahead. So I talked about the tools. You can pick, let's say, ChatGPT. You can do something as simple as what should I eat to get to my fitness goals? What should my calendar look like to manage my time appropriately? Or in this case, as a pharmacy educator, what can I do to use these models to help me be a better educator, be a better teacher, be a better professor, be a more efficient professional? So you can ask ChatGPT to help you write exams and quizzes, help you build case studies for your students. And not just any case study, but it's structured with discussion questions, what to expect, what kind of questions to ask to prompt discussions amongst your students, how to summarize long papers, how to give feedback on your students' projects and drafts, how to explain a hard concept and break it down into smaller buckets of information. These are the things that co-pilots and generative AI models are really, really good at taking really complex information and boiling it down into very small consumable concepts is what it's really good at. And as educators, I think you will find it very helpful to use these tools as your thought partners, as your assistants. No one is asking you to replace yourselves with these tools. These tools will never be able to do what you do. You are the brains behind it. But what you can do to save yourselves a lot of time and energy and some brain power is to use these generative AI tools just like you would if you have a teaching assistant, if you have a someone that you're training and you want to show them how to do your job. That's exactly how you want to treat these generative AI models, as an assistant, as a thought partner, as someone who's there to help you do your job faster and better, not to do your job for you. I think that's the distinction a lot of people forget, is letting AI do the entire job versus taking AI's help to get a task done. And that's where we will focus the rest of our presentation on. So to be able to use these generative AI tools, the one skill everyone must have is to prompt. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have heard of this thing called prompt engineering, or the concept of the output is only as good as your input. What does that mean? If I ask anybody a general question without giving them the context, without giving a very specific problem to solve, I'm not going to get the right answer, right? So the quality of the answer or the outcome that you get from these generative AI tools completely depends on the kind of prompt or the input that you're giving it. So if there's anything I want you to take away from this presentation, it's this slide. I want you to think about assigning a role to your generative AI tool, assigning a clear task, identifying the audience who you want to make this presentation for, or quiz for, a project for, or a lesson plan for, giving it a context, asking for the right format, and giving it the right constraints and tone. So for example, I could have made this presentation entirely with AI. I could have fed my Claude the requirements that I received from the institution asking me to prepare a presentation. But if I did that, I would have most certainly gotten a presentation in 5 minutes or less, and I would not have to prepare a thing. But instead, what I did was I gave myself a role. I said to my Claude, I am a subject matter expert in AI. That's my role. My task is to prepare a presentation for the educators on AI readiness. So the task is to make a presentation. The audience are educators, yourselves. I'm not making this for students. I'm not making this for my neighbors or my friends or people at FDA or people in the movie industry. I'm making it specifically for the professors, the assistant professors, the instructors, generally speaking, the educators in the pharmacy education space. The context is the AI readiness for educators to be prepared for the changing curriculum to incorporate AI. The format is I want it in a PowerPoint presentation, and the constraints being I want it to fit in 1 hour. I want it in a PowerPoint format. I don't want it to be more than 25 slides so I can actually save time at the end for discussions and live demos. So instead of just saying to Claude, make me a presentation to help pharmacy educators understand AI, I said, as an AI expert, as an AI subject matter expert, make a presentation for pharmacy educators to help them be AI ready and understand ethical and regulatory constraints of AI in a PowerPoint format, make it under 1 hour presentation, under 25 slides, and keep the tone to be very friendly and easy to follow rather than overwhelming and intimidating. That's how you create a prompt. You're assigning a role, a task, an audience, a context, format, and constraints. And the reason I'm spending so much time on this slide is because how efficient you are and how good you are at using generative AI completely depends on your prompt. The stronger your prompt, the stronger the output will be. And so I'm happy to share these slides with everyone, but if there's one thing I want you to take away from this presentation, it will be this. Any questions on anything I've said so far before we move on? Feel free to unmute yourselves, ask a question, put it in the chat, or save it for later. I just want to make sure this is something that we are all able to kind of iterate on and understand so you can actually implement it in your teaching. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sorry,
Any
you were saying?
questions from the audience till now? Ma'am, I'm asking the participant to ask any questions
Okay,
till now.
sure.
Any questions? Okay, ma'am, we can continue, ma'am.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for checking. So as I was saying, if your prompt is weak, your output's going to be weak. And what I mean by that is if you just say to your generative AI, create a case study about drug interactions, it will probably spit out something like this. A 50-year-old patient is taking multiple medications, experiences side effects, consider pharmacological mechanisms, and suggest appropriate monitoring. It's a very, very generic output. What can you do with this? Not much. But if you, as an educator, are saying you are a clinical pharmacology lecturer, so you can put yourself in that shoe. You are a you can put yourself in the formulation or drug development or whatever, a pharmaceutical analysis or whatever your particular role is, you can assign yourself that role, give it a personality, create a teaching case study for, it doesn't have to be final year PharmD students. It could be first year B Pharm students. It could be second year master's students or whatever the audience is that you're trying to solve for, and the use case, and end with 4 graded discussion questions. So you have to be very specific what you want out of it. Do you want a presentation? Do you want a quiz? Do you want a discussion topic? And how long do you want this output to be? Do you want it 10 pages long? Do you want it to write a book? Or do you want it to be fitting in 1 page or under, that is 400 words, and flag where the students must verify against a current reference? So this is the kind of prompt that will give you the most comprehensive output. And I actually pressure tested this myself. And so just spending an extra 5 to 10 seconds or maybe 20 to 30 seconds to think about what you really want out of your generative AI tool will actually help you minimize the number of times you have to revise the ask. In other words, think about ahead of time, assigning the role, the context, the ask, the specifics of how you want the output to look like. So you're saving yourselves 5 questions down the line. but doesn't mean that you don't interact with the GPT. You keep asking it questions until you're fully satisfied. So this is the difference between the same question, whether the prompt is weak and gives you a mediocre output, or a really strong input that gives you a very strong output that you can actually use. And this is my number one rule. Never ever accept the first draft. Yes, the GPTs are so sophisticated, the outputs look so professional, you just want to take it and run with it. I highly encourage everybody to push back on your GPTs. I want you to be so confident in the output because you are at the end of the day making lesson plans, educating students. You want so much confidence in what you're bringing to your students and in your lesson plans and in your project design that if you spend enough time training your GPT, you will have really good results down the line. So initially, think of it as an upfront investment, training your model on who you are, what you do, what is that your priorities are, what you want the outputs to look like, and adjust the level accordingly. You can say, make it harder, make it easier. One question I always ask my GPT when I give it a prompt is, how confident are you in this output? And it immediately stops and thinks and verifies every single number, every single fact, every single reference that it kind of spits out in less than 0.5 seconds. And then it says, I have high confidence in this output. Or sometimes it says, actually, I made a mistake. I confused between these two articles. Let me revise this for you, because it's important that you have a certain level of trust with your GPT, but not to fully trust it, and to always, always ask for proof. Always ask for, show me the references. When you're giving me an output, always give me the references. So these are the things you always want to look for in your GPT's response. And then you can ask for, actually, this response is too long. Make it shorter, put it under 200 words, or I actually don't like the paragraph version. Can you put it in a table? That's usually my ask. I'm a very visual person. I see things better when it's in a table format. So I always ask, I don't want paragraphs. Can you put it in a table format? Or I'll say, I want this in a very beautiful presentation that I can take to my leadership. Can you make it into a very professional, minimally designed and formatted presentation? Or I will say, this is something that is going to the client. I want it as a PDF. Can you make it into a PDF? And also, if overall everything looks good, I ask for small tweaks. Like, I like the first page, but I'm not the biggest fan of the second page, or I don't like this. Can you retweak this? So treat it as your assistant, as a thought partner, as someone you talk to, instead of just accepting the first thing that they give you. And so a lot of GPTs are out there. GPTs are generative profiles or generative co-pilots. A lot of people are familiar with ChatGPT. It is honestly one of the easiest and the most friendliest generative AI tools out there. If you have never used a GPT, I would highly recommend everybody to get ChatGPT, because Claude, Gemini, and Copilot are a little bit more sophisticated. Not that you can use it, but if you're kind of on the fence and not sure if you should use generative AI, I highly encourage everybody to download ChatGPT. It is free to use. It is very easy to use. It's very intuitive. It's like just chatting with yourself. It's fun. I highly encourage everybody to try it. If you are someone like me who does a lot of documentation, who does a lot of research and market analysis, and needs to present facts to leadership and strategy, Claude is a really good tool. If you're someone that is fact-oriented and needs a lot of data points to reference, Gemini is a good tool, because Gemini is made by Google, and Google owns the internet like we know it, right? All of our search lies in Google. So if you want a lot of data points and facts, Gemini is a good tool. If you're someone who makes a lot of PowerPoints and Word documents and PDFs, and a lot of your organizations live in Microsoft, Outlooks, and Team, then Copilot is a good generative AI tool for you. It doesn't matter which generative AI tool you pick. I promise you, they're pretty much all the same. It just depends on how you interact with them and how you use them and how you prompt. If you can learn how to prompt and how to push back on your GPT, those skills are transferable no matter which generative AI tool you're using. I personally use a lot of Claude because I do strategy, and Claude is a good strategy partner. So one of the biggest things that we need to take into account when using AI is ethics and regulation. Can you imagine using ChatGPT to make lesson plans or drug development or make movies or, create political strategies without having confidence in the way that we've created these information, these data sets? Is it ethical? Is it regulated? Right? That's a very loaded question. And this is something I've been thinking about personally. And as an industry, drug development and pharma and biotech, who are my customers and clients that I work closely with, we're all constantly thinking about the ethical and regulatory concerns of AI. Let's put it back in your perspective as educators. I'm sure this is very concerning for you to think about, how do I use AI? Isn't my whole job to actually educate my students with my knowledge and shape them into the next generation of pharmacists and researchers and pharmacologists and drug developers? How can I trust an artificial intelligence form to take my place and do things better than me? I think that is a very valid question, but I don't think we should be asking that exact question. Instead, we should be thinking about, there is this new powerful tool that has become available to us. How do I use it? How do I make it help me be a better educator? How do I use generative AI to help me be a better researcher? How do I use generative AI to help me be a better professional and a better overall team member and contributor? And how do I make sure that the information that I'm gathering from these AI tools is ethically sourced, is sufficiently regulated, and I have high confidence in actually taking this information to my students, to my colleagues, to my leadership, to my management, and generally speaking, the world at large. And those are really important things for us to take into account before we completely immerse ourselves in generative AI tools. So while regulation from your context might look something different, like you're probably concerned about what are the regulations around using AI in teaching, especially in pharmacy education. And because I'm not an educator, because I'm not directly involved in, nor do I keep up with the regulation of the universities, I can't comment on that, but the regulatory bodies that I care about are the FDA and EMA, which I'm sure as pharmacy professionals, FDA is extremely important in the way we develop drugs as pharmacy professionals, in the way we do research, whether it's clinical research, preclinical research, post-market surveillance. We all hinge upon FDA's guidance. And so I kind of put this presentation together in terms of thinking about the regulatory considerations put forward by FDA and European Medical Association. So they've been giving out guidances for the past few years on the use of AI in drug development and discovery. And 6 months ago in January, they together, instead of giving individual guidances, FDA and EMA together put together 10 guiding principles of good practice, good AI practices in drug development. So they can actually help pharmaceutical companies guide guide pharmaceutical companies in the way we think about AI, the way we use AI in such an important area like drug discovery and development. So, the first and foremost principle, human-centric by design, which means no matter how sophisticated your AI tools can be, there always has to be a human in the loop to verify, to vet, to have that approval. And I think the same principle applies to us and you as an educator is, yeah, AI can give you a lesson plan, but you as the human have to be at the center of it. You have to tell the AI what your lesson plans should look like, what your curriculum should look like, what your topics of discussion should look like, and then use that as your assistant to help get more information. But at the end of the day, you have to be the one to make that judgment call, whether or not this is appropriate for your students, whether or not this is up to the standards of the university curriculum, whether or not this is actually sufficiently educating your students enough. Always take a risk-based approach. Like I said, do not trust the ChatGPT or GPT tools in general and take the first draft that it gives you. Always assume that it's wrong and verify the source of truth. Always adhere to standards. It doesn't matter what we're doing. We always have to have certain standards, whether it is making sure that the GPT is getting only published peer-reviewed literature as its sources, or taking the output to a colleague and saying like, hey, this is what I am seeing. What do you think? Is this up to the standards? Do you think this is something that we can bring to our students and our board of governance? Right? Fourth principle is clear context of use. And I cannot stress this enough. Context matters more than anything else. So you have to tell your GPT, who is this for? Is this for a first year pharmacy student or a final year pharmacy student? Is it for an M-Pharm student? Is it for my peers where I'm actually educating and doing a journal club with other professors? So the context will change the output. So always keep in mind, who is this for? What am I doing this and who am I doing this for? Multidisciplinary expertise, like anything else, you always want to consult with experts and you always want to learn from different areas of expertise when trusting your GPT and when you're putting together all of these presentations, curriculum, and lesson plans. With just like anything else, governance and documentation is important. Make sure you only use trusted resources, but also save your reports and ask your GPT, hey, walk me through how you got to this report. Tell me how you ended up with these results. And so you understand not only what the GPT did and how it did it. That is very important for you to not only help have this discussion with your peers, but also have confidence in the process that the GPT took to get to where you are. Always practice design and development practices that are standard. Always use assessment, risk-based performance assessment of your models. This is something that I do daily, is assume that it's not correct and validate it against other models if you have the time. Life cycle management and clear essential information, that is more in the context of drug development, but you can also extrapolate that for educational purposes as well. So we've talked a lot about how you as educators can use these tools, but there's also something to be said about your students using these tools. We know students are using AI tools every day. And it is so funny to me. I think a few years ago, universities were actually using softwares to detect AI tools that help them write papers and presentations and their theses and their defense and all of that. Now the same universities are saying, teach your students how to use AI. And that's why we're here, right? Like, as educators, you want to be ready to use AI for yourselves, but also how do you educate the next generation of students that we know are going to use AI, and we want to empower them with AI tools and the knowledge to use these AI tools properly in a guided fashion So they're not running free and making up all these reports, putting together presentations that don't make any sense. So teach them as you're teaching yourselves. Teach them to know the context in which they're using these tools. Teach them how to validate these models. So always ask, is the output trustworthy? Ask them to be doubtful of their GPT models and ask for more evidence. And be their partner in this process. Let them know that, hey, if you use AI tools, let us know how and where you used it so we can all stay accountable. We can all collaborate together and have an oversight on your reports. So any industry must validate AI before trusting it, whether it's drug development, whether it is politics, whether it is movie making, whether it is booking airline tickets and creating air traffic routes, right? Like we know AI is being used in every single aspect of our living. So instead of telling our students, hey, it's a bad tool, let's invite them into the conversation because we know they're using it. It's up to us how they're guided in this process. Okay. One of the most important ethical considerations when using AI is something called hallucination. If you've ever used ChatGPT, you will see how quickly and how confidently ChatGPT answers your question. Whether or not it's true, that's a different story. And if you are not vigilant enough to question it, to push back on it, it always assumes that it's the master of everything just because it knows a little bit of information. And this process is called hallucination. In the name itself, as it says, the AI, for it to be creative, for it to generate new context and images and audio and new content, it has to be very creative. It has to be very imaginative. And in technical terms, also, it's called hallucination, where it can actually make up facts, make up data that actually does not exist, even make up citations and publications that actually don't exist. And it has happened hundreds of times and it's been published. So always be wary of the possibility that your AI is hallucinating. And the only way to catch hallucination is to always ask for references, click on the links and see, oh, where is this article actually from? Oh, it's a PubMed article, so I can trust it. Or when you click on the link and there's nothing there, then you know it's hallucinating and it's making up facts. But the thing is, it makes it look so professional, makes it look so real that it's hard to believe that it was just cooking up all of these facts. Another ethical consideration while using AI is bias. So when these GPT models are generated, the makers, so for instance, Google, the company Google when it built Gemini, or the company OpenAI when it built ChatGPT, the company Anthropic when it built Claude, they had access to certain information and they fed these models all of that information. And so as humans, we have bias, right? Like there's always stereotypes. We think of certain things about certain countries. We know, even within India, we know North Indians have certain stereotypes about South Indians, and South Indians have certain stereotypes about North Indians. We have certain stereotypes about Europeans. And it's just one example. We always, as human, have biases and assumptions and stereotypes. And guess what? When these humans, we train these GPT models, we're actually also giving them not only the data, but also our biases. So sometimes these models have been shown to be racist, to be misogynistic, to be discriminatory against certain populations, and confuse between completely different groups of people and ideas and data sets based on who trained these models. So always know that there's a certain level of bias associated with these generative AI tools, and it's up to you to question it to make sure that you are actually using the right information when you're making a presentation or a report or educating your students. And last but not least, privacy is a concern. How much you divulge with your GPT is important, while it is really important that you give it as much information, as much data as possible for the input to be strong so the output is stronger, never ever give your identifiable personal information, your bank account details, especially if you're a clinical pharmacologist or pharmacist like myself who has access to real patient information, real drug discovery information, real confidential information about proprietary information about your businesses. Don't ever feed these models because it's called something called open source model. So whatever you feed the GPT becomes a part of its memory. And so you don't want to risk giving identifier information to your GPT. So always make sure you assume there's a certain level of invention of facts, aka hallucination. There's a certain level of bias, and there's a certain level of data leak within your model. So protect your data accordingly. And there are so many examples where GPT can really derail your life. So I don't want to overwhelm anybody or intimidate anyone, but I would highly encourage everybody to be cautious when you use these tools. Like I said, I talked about this in the previous slides, but some of the ways I make sure that I can trust the output of my generative AI models are always ask for list your sources. Where are you getting this information from? Show me where these articles have been published. How confident are you in this output? And if it says high confidence and it justifies it, that's great. If it says medium confidence, push back and say, why medium confidence? How can you get from medium confident to high confident in this answer? Always push back. Where in this answer are you most likely to be wrong? That's a very good way of making your GPT think and reevaluate its report. Other questions you can ask, what populations might this advice not apply to? Or what should I know when teaching this to a student? What can you independently verify before I bring this to my class? So these questions can help you have more confidence in the reports that your generative AI tools are bringing to you. Just to tie it back to the FDA and EMA mindset, always know the context of use, always validate the facts and the reports that it's giving you, and always be transparent. And this is the most important part. You have to be transparent with your students, with your peers. Hey, I actually made this with AI. I would love to get your feedback and input on this. And this is something I don't know how far this has been implemented in India or other parts of the world, but at least I've been fortunate enough in my company where all the leaders are using AI and they encourage us to use AI. And when I put together presentations and reports and strategy for my leadership, I tell them I made this with Claude, so I welcome your feedback. And because I know I am telling them that I used AI for this, I'm extra careful in the work that I do, but it's not that hard. I use AI to transparently tell the AI I'm actually presenting it to my CEO and my job depends on it. So do not mess this up. Give me only the right answers and the facts and the correct numbers, right? So that transparency builds trust. And my manager recently asked me, I love the reports that you put together for XYZ companies. Can you do the same for this before I go to this conference? So there's a certain level of collaborative transparency that happens when you open up that you're using AI and help each other use AI better. Ultimately, it comes down to mindset shift, right? Like teach students to supervise AI, whether it's for yourself or your students, always know that AI can be wrong and make sure that you're teaching everyone to be extra vigilant. Did someone unmute themselves? Is there a question? Okay. And then reward their transparency, shift the question from what did the AI say to how did you get to this point? How did you check the sources? What did you change to fix this problem? And then reward the judgment, not the generation. So if a student is putting together a presentation using AI, they should not be the concept is you're not rewarding them for making this presentation so fast. It is about how did you interact with your AI tools to get to this point? Walk me through your process. Where did you change things based on your judgment? So have that conversation, have that dialogue with your students, and generate that trust. That is extremely important. Again, this is probably something you are already thinking about. Instead of saying no AI, you can't use AI, say you can tell them you can actually use AI to plan your project. You can use it for brainstorming ideas, generating new ideas, or you can take it one step further and let it be your collaborator. So you can tell me where you're using AI and how you're using it. Bring me a first draft, let you and me think about it like we used to, but we have another tool or an assistant to help us be faster and better. Or you can use AI to do a full critique, use freely, and then evaluate it. But at the end of the day, there's always have to be a human in the loop verifying the output. So some of the teaching strategies that you might find helpful is think of your generative AI as your research assistant. Help your students find a real use case or help synthesize a design or structure it, but let the students do the thinking. So you're just giving them some ideas and some prompts. Or you can actually be a peer reviewer. You can use your GPT as a peer reviewer. What does a peer reviewer do? Someone who's equal to your status in knowledge and experience. So when a student presents a draft design of an experiment or a project or a case study, you are reviewing it with your AI and give structured feedback so the student can take it back and revise it and bring it back to you. Or you can actually use AI to generate the entire project or design an entire project. You just give them some ideas, like we're talking about pharmaceutical analysis as a third year B Pharm student. What kind of experiments can you do or design to prove certain use case or to come up with certain experiments? So there's different levels of engagement that your students can have with AI, whether it's using that as a research assistant or a peer or a scenario generator, which is basically their thinking partner. Just make sure you're in the loop so you can help them better. Some of the other strategies, you might have heard of Socrates' famous teaching philosophy. Socrates used to say, you teach students better by asking them questions instead of lecturing them, instead of telling them what you know. Ask them questions and make them think. Because when we think, we are more inclined to actually remembering these things and using our own logical thinking skills. So we come up with a better way of understanding the concept. Same thing applies to your AI. I never go to my AI and say, make me a presentation about educating pharmacy educators. I don't say that. I say, what do you know about how pharmacy is taught in India? What do you know about how pharmacy professors and instructors in India make their curriculum and lesson plans? What do you know about this drug development landscape and how pharmaceutical companies are viewing AI? So I always start with the question. And when you ask AI a question, what it does is it automatically digs deep within all of its data, within all of the information that it's been fed over the past decade or so, and understands what we're actually trying to do. And then give it a task, then ask it a question instead of just asking it to make a presentation. Ask about, what do you know about pharmacovigilance? What do you know about pharmacoepidemiology? What do you know about drug development and the phases of drug discovery? And then ask a specific question. You're more likely to get a better response and more comprehensive response than just asking for a task. So that's one thing I would highly encourage everybody to follow, both yourselves and also teach your students to ask AI to think about certain things. And And then the AI questions the student, defends their reasoning. Always make sure you ask your students, what is the reasoning here? How did you get to where you are? How did you get to this report? What is the logic behind this methodology? Where did you and your AI model come up with this particular model as your reasoning partner? And then take it from there. So how can you help your students design projects or mini projects that teach judgment on how to best use AI tools? It should be both rooted in pharmacy content, but also give them AI literacy, like we talked about, teach them about validating their models, the data, the output, help them understand that you have to spot the biases in these output because the AI models are not perfect. And more importantly, teach them to be honest and transparent. So you can actually have a collaborative discussion. They disclose to you that they used AI to make this report, and then you actually together comb through the report and look at the positives, the negatives, and the things that you can improve on. So think of it as if your student is just asking AI to do the project with one prompt and the AI just gives them a report, then that's a shortcut. That's pretty much cheating. That's not what we want. What we want is your students to use AI to leverage the knowledge that the AI has to be their thought partner and help them design these projects, help them understand the concepts better, help them design better experiments. At the end of the day, human judgment has to be the ultimate say, and train them to be that human in the loop and be in charge of their project, not AI. AI is just an assistant who will help them get there faster and better. And same applies to all of us, whatever task that is we're doing, AI is just a tool and our assistant. We are in charge of the decisions that we make, whether it is our meal plans, our schedules, our lesson plans, our curriculum, the strategy that I put together for my CEOs, or the company spend and the budget decisions that my CEO has to make as a company, as a CEO that runs multi-billion-dollar company, right? At the end of the day, it's our judgment that we have to be responsible for. And if you are someone who is guiding your students through a mini project, then you can use this template to use AI to draft as an example, a patient counseling talking points for a newly approved drug, and then critique the draft and then verify against current reference. So this is just help them do the step-by-step in getting to a point instead of just asking AI to put a report together or put a critique together. Always be their thought partner. Always question the report, always interrogate the results, always ask the AI to summarize the findings and probe it, and write a one-page plain language credibility assessment. Would a regulator accept this report? And if not, why not, right? Always make sure practicing the data and the report that the AI is giving you with you, the human, as the judging partner, and whether or not that AI is reasoning and it's trustworthy. I don't know if you would find this helpful, but I asked my GPT. If I were a pharmacy educator, I asked, how can I be a better steward of helping my students understand, but also judge their work when they're using AI? So maybe think about what is the accuracy of the content that they're putting together in terms of pharmacy related content accuracy. So maybe give that 25% weightage. Critical evaluation skills of your students. Are your students just accepting whatever the AI is giving them, or actually they're critically evaluating it using their critical thinking skills? Are they able to identify the mistakes and the shortcomings of the report and actually taking it back to the AI and pushing back and refining it? Are they double checking the sources and validating the references and citations, or are they just taking the first draft that the AI gives them? Are they being transparent in telling you whether or not they used AI, what tools they used, and how confident they are in these tools? And then the judgment and revision. Like I said, at the end of the day, your student is responsible for the presentation that they're making to you, the report they're bringing to you, or whatever they choose to put in their project summary. And so how are their judgment skills, and how are they able to use AI as their thought partner instead of replacing themselves with AI? And I think maybe that will help you understand, in this age of AI, how much freedom are we giving the students to use AI versus completely depend on AI and not have any critical thinking skills to themselves and ourselves too. This applies very much to us as well. So this is the last slide I have. If I were to summarize everything into one slide, it is learn how to prompt. If you give a messy input, the response will be weak, but it's okay. You can always iterate with your GPT. Don't ever take the first answer. Always ask it, how did you get to this response? What are your sources? How confident are you? And then let it revise its own report. And then validate. Click on the links, click on the sources, click on the articles that the AI is saying where it got information from. Make sure you validate the sources, and then clean it up, be the ultimate final judge of this report, be the human in the loop that validates, that verifies, and puts that approval stamp before you share it with your students, with your peers, with your boss, with the management and leadership. So always make sure that you are in charge, and AI is just another tool that is help you do your job better and faster. With that, I will take any questions, and I will leave you with this one task this week. Pick one real task you're going to do anyway. Instead of doing it by yourself, just open ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or Copilot and make it do this task for you and see how that compares. And remember, always assign a role, identify the task, clearly define who the audiences are, give the AI the context in what format you want this report or output, and define the tone, the constraints, and the parameters in which you want this report to fit. Again, don't aim to master AI, just aim to start. That's all I will leave you with. Any questions?
వీళ్ళు ఎందుకు చప్పట్లు అవి ఇవి కొడుతున్నారు?
Thank you, ma'am, for your explanation. That's so informative, ma'am. So I request our audience, if any questions, if you ask, madam will give the answers. Any questions from the audience? Please post it in the chat group.
Yeah,
raise your hand.
time.
Okay, ma'am. Till now we don't have any questions. Ma'am, from my side, ma'am, it's very informative, ma'am. From basic level to you told everything about AI and how we have to give instructions to the chat GPT. So you told me that one tagline, a strong prompt, if we give to the chat GPT, it will give the strong output. Yes, ma'am, I like that, ma'am. Thank you for your session, for the information and the guidelines that you give us how to use ChatGPT, and also thank you for educating us how to give the instructions to the students also. Thank you once again, ma'am. And also, thank you once again, ma'am. Thank you for sharing your valuable time also. Ma'am, it's time to honor our guest speaker. Dr. Harika Sabineni Garu. Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your expertise and enriching session. So here we display your certificate of appreciation, ma'am, for delivering your session. And also we personally will forward the certificate to your mail ID also.
Thank
Thank
you. I
you, ma'am.
appreciate that.
And
Of
also
course.
thank
Thank
all
you
the
all.
participants to participating in the event. In the afternoon also, we will be having a great session. Please join in the session.
Thank you so much, Harika Sabineni, for accepting our
Thank you, ma'am.
invitation on the point.
Of course, my
Thank
pleasure.
you. Wait for you. Thank you for
No
giving time.
problem.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
appreciate it. And if you want the slides, I'm happy to send a copy as well. My goal is for everybody to be able to use this information and be successful.
Thank you. Sure.
Of course.
Thank you,
Thanks
ma'am.
again. Have a good
Thank
day. Bye.